Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. In the thumbnail, I have my bookmark. Her name is Bait. Okay, she has huge eyes after she had an accident where someone took a chunk out of her body or something. She's developed pinchers now to help ward them off. And as you can see, her stomach has also been torn open. The term bait means to put a piece of food in order to attract and catch an animal. One thing that I find fascinating about that term, it reduces an organism because usually a bait is a worm, and a worm was created for a different purpose other than food. But the function in the world gets attributed to being food, though God had an original purpose for the animal. And so when it's you're taking an animal that God created for one purpose and removing the meaning of the animal and reducing it to just being food, and then further reducing the existence of the animal by, oh, well, it's used to be attractive. It's an attractive item for a predator. The relationship of an animal that got created attracting a more fierce animal, that idea is just there. And when I think of a bookworm, particularly in school, isn't that kind of what happens? A bookworm, a person that's into books, is, especially if you grow up in a community that discourages reading and information, seems to attract a lot of attention that, wasn't intended. I just think that's important to consider that. Also with bait tends to be outnumbered in its environment, right? When an animal gets reduced to bait, it tends to be a situation that isn't great. Just think that's interesting, that's all. 2 Kings 25. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, and the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his host, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it. And they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city round about, and the king went the way toward the plain. And the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. So they took the king, and brought him up to the king of Babylon to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire. And all the army of the Chaldees that were with the captain of the guard brake down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon with the remnant of the multitude, did Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carry away. But the captain of the guard left of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases, and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break in pieces, and carried the brass of them to Babylon. And the pots, and the shovels, and the snuffers, and the spoons, and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, took they away. and the fire pans, and the bowls, and such things as were of gold, in gold, and of silver, in silver, the captain of the guard took away. The two pillars, one seat, and the bases which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord, the brass of all these vessels was without weight. The height of the one pillar was 18 cubits, and the chapiter upon it was brass, and the height of the chapiter 3 cubits, and the wreathen work and pomegranates upon the chapiter round about, all of brass, and like unto these hath the second pillar with wreathen work. And the captain of the guard took Sariah the chief priest, and Zephaniah the second priest, and the 3 keepers of the door. And out of the city he took an officer that was set over the men of war, and 5 men of them that were in the king's presence, which were found in the city, and the principal scribe of the host which mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land that were found in the city. And Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, took these and brought them to the king of Babylon to Riblah, and the king of Babylon smote them and slew them at Riblah in the hand of Hamath. So Judah was carried away out of their land. And as for the people that remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left, even over them he made Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler. And when all the captains of the armies, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, there came to Gedaliah to Mizpah, even Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, and Johanan the son of Kareah, and Sariah the son of Tanhumeth, the Netophathite, and Jazaniah the son of a Maacathite, they and their men. And Gedaliah swore to them and to their men, and said unto them, Fear not to be the servants of the Chaldees, dwell in the land, and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be with you. But it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, the seed of the seed royal, came, and 10 men with him, and smote Gedaliah that he died, and the Jews and the Chaldees that were with him at Mizpeh, and all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies, arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldees. And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, that Evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, did lift up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, out of prison. And he spake kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings that were with him in Babylon, and changed his prison garments. And he did eat bread continually before him all the days of his life, and his allowance was a continual allowance given him of the king, a daily rate for every day, all the days of his life. The previous chapter, 2 Kings 24, Jehoiakim breaks away from servitude under Babylon, and God sends 4 groups of people to attack Judah. He dies, and his son Jehoiachin becomes an evil king next. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon besieges and removes King Jehoiachin, his family, the skilled workers, and anyone else capable of war from Judah, leaving only the poorest people on the land. The king of Babylon appoints Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's uncle, to become king of Judah next. The king of Babylon changes Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah, and he reigns for 11 years. Our current chapter, 2 Kings 25. And Zedekiah's 9th year ruling Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon works with the Chaldees people in leading a successful attack against what is left of Judah. King Zedekiah is captured, forced to endure a trial, then forced to witness the murder of his sons before his own eyes are gouged. Nebuzaradan, a Babylonian servant, burns down the houses that remain in Judah, as well as the temple Solomon built. The poorest people of Judah are left on the land. King Nebuchadnezzar made Gedaliah ruler over Judah. Ishmael, a notable man of Judah, attacks Gedaliah with 10 men and takes his life. We learn Jehoiachin has been in captivity in Babylon 37 years. King Evil Merodach shows kindness to Jehoiachin and gives him an allowance of food for the rest of his life. This is the end of Judah and the end of the book of 2 Kings. So, I made up a song that's been in my head because 2 large women were very mean to me. I made up a mean song about them, but I'm not going to sing it. I've offended a lot of people with my songs in my life. It's a catharsis. Writing out a song is catharsis. I think that's how a lot of rappers get started. They get started through a diss song following heartbreak. I will spare you, though. I'm sure you have enough of your struggles if you've got to take things out on someone who's done nothing to you. I don't have to pray for you. Okay. So, 2 Kings 25, we are summarizing. You won't get to me, you won't get to me, you won't get to me, lady. You won't get to me, lady. You won't get to me, lady. That's a nice part. I won't say, I won't tell you the other part. The other part makes me laugh. Okay, so in 25 verse 1, Zedekiah, he's in his 9th year reigning over Judah. King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, leads an attack against him and the nation of Judah. And this lasted from the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign until the 11th year. So the first thing the first question that I have is because in the previous chapter, 2 Kings 24, verse 14, the king of Babylon, he conquered King Jehoiachin, who was king before Zedekiah. He conquered Jehoiachin and then carried off all of the things of value and all the people. So it says in verse 43, none remain except the poorest people in the land, and carry Jehoiachin away. And part of that disrespectful action was then taking Mattaniah, who is Jehoiachin's uncle. Mattaniah is also one of Josiah's sons. So Josiah was the righteous king. So, like a form of disrespect, take Mattaniah, who was the righteous king's brother, change his name to Zedekiah, and then, so that name change alone is disrespectful for a Babylonian king, another king to change your name, and then put him in a place of power over, again, the poorest people of the land. So that's why now when we're here at 2 Kings 25, the 9th, how was this city or this territory of people able to survive 11 years of war against the king of Babylon? That's saying a lot. So I just thought that was, something to note. Maybe these were a really powerful group of people. So, in verse 3, the famine in Judah was so severe, there was no food. It says here, then verse 4, the people that were attacking Judah were able to make, break into the city of Judah, which is crazy because these are the poorest people of the land. Again, after Solomon's disobedience, the descendants of the descendants of Jacob, they are living on the promised land. So we're beyond the 40 years in the wilderness. These people are living on the land now. But after King Solomon disobeys, the nation is fractured into Judah, I like Judah being mishand, Judah and Israel, okay? Israel has been removed from this territory, from the promised land, and all we had left is Judah. It says in the previous chapter, all but the poorest people. But then when we get here in this chapter, we see that these people were still able to withstand a war for 11 years. So the other thing that we need to note is that often in societies that are crumbling, or societies that are crumbling, that are trying to document the fall of their empire, you will see records not being consistent or having a gap like this, where maybe in the previous part of the book the action concluded, but then we read later there's more detail. That's another that's like another characterization. What word do I want to use? Another trait of a crumbling tribe. And so we'll just see accounts being a little bit choppy because we're seeing all these changes in leadership. We're seeing these people continue to get conquered. And so information on top of this is a really old document. And we don't know who wrote the book of Second Kings. So all that together just helps us to understand this information as having some inconsistencies, and we just have to accept it. Okay, so, and the other thing that I want to note, these people were only able to break into the city once there was no food. So they had to be weak. Like, that's saying a lot about this group of Judah. Anyway, the Chaldeans pursued the king, King Zedekiah, took him in Jericho. You know, I don't want to say take, that implies it, defeated him, okay? And his army scattered. I mean, now think about it. There's no food, and, you know, they're being attacked. Okay, and there's already a prophecy that Judah's going to get destroyed. So, you know, I guess people just tried to escape. It says they passed sentence on him. In the King James Version, it says that they gave judgment on him. I mean, this is a ultimate disrespect. You're already conquering them, and now you're going to like put them through a trial. I mean, it's just the disrespect. Verse 7, they slaughtered King Zedekiah's sons. So after pursuing him, capturing him, watching all of his men run away from him, then they give him this false trial. He was going to be guilty anyway, okay? But they give him a trial. And then they kill his sons in front of him and blind him, gouging out his eyes. Put out his eyes means to gouge. So the last thing that you saw were your sons being murdered. Terrible. Now we get to verse 8. Okay, when Nebuchadnezzar had been ruling Babylon for 19 years, Nebuzaradan, a captain of the bodyguard, and the only reason why it may seem like I'm pronouncing these words is because today, I've recorded this a couple of times before I felt like it was ready for me to present it. And so I've said this, sounded it out over and over and over again. So I just want to put that out there. When I first read this, Nebuzaradan, it takes a few times to get your mouth to do things. Okay, that's not what I wanted to say. I don't want to say what that mouth do. I'm not trying to be ignorant. I'm trying to be honest, but it's just not coming out right. Okay, anyway. In the 5th month, when Nebuchadnezzar had been ruling Babylon for 19 years, he has a servant named Nebuzaradan, and captain of the bodyguards. He had some sort of ranking. That's all I really understand, because when we click this verse and we look at the King James, it says captain of the guard. Okay, he has some sort of ranking when it comes to militia groups. I don't know. He was the captain of the bodyguards, I guess. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. So there's a servant. He comes to Jerusalem, burns down the temple and the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem. And the Chaldeans who were with him continued to destroy what was left of Jerusalem. And the people that were left in the city, which again, in the previous chapter, I thought it was nobody left. So I'm not sure, but it says the people who were left, they left. Oh, I'm sorry. They didn't. They did leave, but they left with this servant, Nebuzaradan, and they were carried back to Babylon. And it says in verse 12, they left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowmen. left them to, I guess, tend to the land. And that does sound a lot like this right here, the previous chapter 24. Uh, carried away all Jerusalem. So these could be, we again, we don't know who wrote Second Kings, so these could be two accounts, two different accounts from two different people who just saw something happen. But when an empire is crumbling, there's not always the most accurate attention, because it's not always the most accurate detail being presented, because we're witnessing the end. The person is trying to write it as it's ending. So then we get to verse 13. Verse 13 through 18. Okay, so there's more. Okay, I'm sorry. Verse 13 through 17. It's detailed what happened to these items that were sacred, because in 1 Kings 6 and 7, Solomon spent 7 years building this temple, crafting all of the special items. And so what's significant about what Solomon did, before Solomon created a house, what we have to first understand, Solomon creating a home for him, or creating a structure for God, is significant, because this is the first permanent home God has. After they it's the first permanent home God has since the Israelites escaped Egypt. So it's the first permanent home that he has. It's the first permanent home that he has, period. And then this is after they've established themselves in the promised land that God gave them. So that's the significance of Solomon building the home, or building the house of God. Okay? Also, in Exodus 35 through 40, there was a portable tabernacle that was created during Moses' leadership. So that was what God had when the Israelites were traveling in the wilderness, when they escaped Egypt. Okay? God had a portable tabernacle. And in Numbers 3 and 4, this detailed the Levites and how they were supposed to be the only ones handling the business. I don't want to say business, but paying money, it is kind of a business. They're handling, the contributions being made to the temple. They are officiating ceremonies with sacrifices being made. So they're doing that. But the Levites also are the ones who carry certain parts of the tabernacle to the next destination and then set it up. So in 1 Kings 6 and 7, when Solomon builds this temple, it is a really big deal. And so now that we're seeing the destruction of Judah, and we see the Chaldeans and the Babylonians breaking it down in verses 13 to 17, this is why there's so much detail. Or I don't want to explain why, but I just want you to understand there's a significance to this, and there's detail of, the stands and the sea, and this is all describing the items that were broken. And we see verse 16 talking about Solomon, because Solomon built these things, and they're just cutting them and breaking them down, and it's just part of that removing a captive's culture, removing their existence, which is what happens to every group that gets conquered. Their existence gets distorted and removed and absorbed into who conquers. Also, we see in 2 Kings 23, King Josiah does the same thing with these alternative belief systems. So the belief systems that God prohibits, we see in 2 Kings 23, Josiah going to different places and breaking things apart and desecrating these areas, because that's part of what, when a group of people are conquered, that's part of what has to happen in order to force assimilation, in order to force unity, so that the conquerors can continue in power. The conquerors cannot continue when there's consideration from who they conquer. They have to be able to force them into merging into the dominant culture in order uh, to have things run smoothly. A house divided against itself is going to fall. So there has to be, they have to do that and erase those differences. Okay? So we get to verse 18. The captain of the guard, this Nebuzaradan, okay, he took these men, okay, the 1, 2, 3 keepers of the household, 5 men, the kings. He took these men to the king of Babylon. Okay, he's removing the church staff. Okay, yeah, that's right. So these are the church staff. So they're breaking down the church, breaking down these items, and then removing the church staff, bringing them to the king of Babylon, put them to death. And it says Judah was taken into exile out of its land. So the people that God intended to be there are removed. We get to verse 22. The people that remained in Judah. Over the people that remained, this guy, what's his name? Nebuzaradan. Okay, the servant. Okay, well, I'll not say that. I feel like this is not clear enough to say who appointed Gedaliah to be the governor of what was left of Judah. So someone was left over Judah. This account is saying Gedaliah was left over Judah. Verse 23, when the other people, because I'm guessing, looking at this is sounding like there were other leaders in Judah, and Gedaliah was made governor by some outsider that doesn't even live in Judah. But Gedaliah is now being made ruler over what's left of Judah. So these other men meet with him. And in verse 24, Gedaliah, he says, oh, don't be afraid of these people. Just fear not, just live here, it'll be fine. But Ishmael, one of the other leaders in Judah, came with 10 men and took his life. And it says, along with the Jews and the Chaldeans who were with him. Then it says in 26, all the people and the captains went to Egypt because they were afraid of the Chaldeans. And so we learn in verse 27 that Jehoiachin is still alive and he has been in exile for 37 years. Ugh. So then there's another king of Babylon, evil Merodach, which I cannot believe someone's name begins with evil, but King Evil of Babylon, another king. It says here in the English Standard that he freed Jehoiachin. I know in the King James it says he lifted up his head. But anyway, he treated him with kindness and gave him an allowance and let him eat with him for the rest of his life.